In the Sun, Chapter 11. A Place in the Sun. Merneptah's eyes fluttered open. The first thing he saw was an image, the image of the goddess Sekhmet. She hovered over his bed, suspended in air. She floated in a ball of light, gathered and magnified from the sunlight that leaked through the shutters. Merneptah reached for her. The movement brought him full awake. A statue of Sekhmet stood on a table at his bedside. He closed his eyes, pressed on his eyelids with his fingertips, then opened them again slowly. Sekhmet remained solidly on the table. Merneptah ran his tongue over his lips. His mouth was as dry as the desert. He raised himself on one elbow. His father overflowed the bedside chair. His upper body sprawled across the bottom of Merneptah's couch. He snored lightly. Merneptah beckoned a servant with crooked finger and mouthed the word, "Water." His father continued to snore undisturbed. The word had not left Merneptah's lips before a goblet appeared, sweating from the cold well water. Merneptah drank deep. He felt the coolness flow down his throat and disappear into his body. The second goblet he sipped at. Peering over the brim, Merneptah looked around the room at physicians and priests, heads bowed in prayer. In the corner, a ragged boy about his own age squatted, studying him intently. He can't be a palace slave, Merneptah thought. He is all bones and rags. What is he doing here? Senwut felt uncomfortable under the sudden scrutiny of the Great One's son. He'd grown to know the sleeping face after watching it for 2 days now. Awake, the face looked different. Senwut was conscious of his torn clothing and bare feet. His body, once strong, was now little more than sticks wrapped in flesh. He must think I'm a beggar. Senwut straightened his back as best as he could, while still keeping his head below the level of the pharaoh's. Merneptah wondered what the boy was thinking. The sickness has stolen my strength, he thought. It's left me pale and poxed. He must see me as weak, not fit to be the next pharaoh. He must wonder how I will manage to make the waters of the Nile flood and the sun rise. Merneptah summoned a servant to put sandals on his feet. He sat on the edge of the couch. His head whirled. He tried to keep watching the boy, but the room darkened. When he was sure he was about to faint, the image of Sekhmet hovered in the darkness, glowing brighter, until slowly Merneptah's vision cleared. Sekhmet stood on the table. Merneptah reached out to touch her, but stopped. His fingers extended not more than a grain of sand's distance from her gilded face, and then he knew. You are the sculptor. It was not a question. Senwut bowed his head. Merneptah whispered, "She came for me in my sleep." Senwut looked up at Merneptah, who struggled to hide the faint tremor in his weakened hand. He is as ashamed by his pitiful state as I am by mine, Senwut thought. It seems we have both known better times before Sekhmet's assistance was needed. Senwut looked at his own wasted frame. Merneptah smiled. "So you read thoughts as well?" "I need only look into my own heart." Senwut realized the boldness of comparing himself, a sculptor, son, to the son of a god. He flattened himself to the chamber floor. "Father would not permit you in my chamber if he didn't find you worthy. Rise." Senwut sat upright. The great god discovered that the statue healed my father when things looked hopeless. I think he prayed it would do the same for you. He loves you very much. Senwut had been surprised by Pharaoh's devotion to his son. It was so human, so mortal. The voices nudged Pharaoh from his slumber. He looked to the empty headrest, confused, not fully awake. Then, seeing his son sitting, his eyes widened, and he lunged for Merneptah. He hugged him fiercely. "Praise Amun and Sekhmet! And Sekhmet!" The pharaoh grabbed the statue and raised it over his head. "Praise Sekhmet!" Ramses clapped his arm around his son's shoulder, crushing him to his side. Merneptah reached for the statue, feeling warmth travel up his fingers when he touched the gilded goddess. Her life force strengthens mine. I feel her heat. Our young sculptor has pleased the goddess with his art. She blesses us all. Call Neferanpet. Summon the scribes. Let it be known that Senwut, son of Yuf, is to be apprenticed to the royal sculptor. Ramses smiled at Senwut. That is, if it pleases him. Everyone in the room turned to Senwut. He didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. Ramses smiled. Then so be it. Merneptah clasped the statue to his chest. What is your name, sculptor? Senmut. It is my wish that the name Senmut be heard always. Senmut thought of the cavern of bodies at Nubia, nameless corpses condemned to wander the land of the ghosts for eternity. His fate could have been the same, but for the wood of an acacia. Ramses II spoke. When the day comes that Osiris calls Senmut to the afterlife, he shall have a place in the royal tomb where he can carve and watch over Merneptah for eternity. Senmut shall live forever. Senmut shall have his place in the sun. Ist Nefret.